Hi everyone, my name is Sierra and I'm a naturalist with the Zionsville Nature Center. Today I am at the gorgeous Zion Nature Sanctuary. It's a beautiful fall day. All of the colors are really popping in our parks right now. So I thought I'd take you along for a little hike while we dive into one of my favorite topics, which is getting little ones outside and exploring nature. So I lead one of our preschool programs called PEEPS, and PEEPS stands for Preschool Environmental Education Program Series. And throughout the series, we meet once a week for 3 weeks for about an hour in the morning. We explore nature and we talk about a different topic each month. So October's topic was all about changing seasons. And the whole goal of this program is to kind of build on the last week. So the first week we talked about signs of fall. We said goodbye to summer, hello to fall. The second week was all about how the leaves are changing colors. We did color hunts. We created art with leaves. And then the third week was about how animals are preparing for winter. So we collected acorns like squirrels and we did all kinds of fun activities. And as I've kind of built up this program, I've come across some activities that I'd love to share with you guys today. Some of them I've gotten inspiration from others. Some of them are just activities I like to pull out of my back pocket when I feel like we need a reset moment. So I think we're gonna hit the trail. I'm gonna share some activities with you guys. But the whole goal of this is that anyone can do it. You don't have to be a naturalist. You don't have to know every single bird and every single plant you see. It's just about getting kids outside and getting them exploring, creating, and thinking. So let's go ahead and hit this trail together. If you haven't been to the Zion Nature Sanctuary before, this park is located right behind Eagle Elementary School and it has a little bit of everything. So it's got this gravel path going down to a wetland, there's also a forest loop, and there's a little creek running through the park. Like I said, all of the colors are really popping right now, so it's a really great time to be outside. So I think we all understand that being outside has numerous benefits on our physical and mental well-being, both for adults and kids, right? But early childhood is such an important time for learning and development, and nature is the perfect classroom for it. For young children, nature play is not just about having fun. It is fun, and I'll show you some really fun activities, but it also helps them build skills. Skills like balance and coordination. Balancing on logs or rocks helps kids build coordination and body awareness. It's a fun way to test their limits. Skills like problem solving and creativity. Nature play sparks imagination and problem solving. There's no right way to build, just creativity and teamwork. And nature play is full of sensory exploration. Outdoor play engages all the senses: touch, smell, sound, sight, helping kids connect with nature in meaningful ways. Nature sparks imagination, which as an adult, I wish I had a little bit more of that, and working with early childhood kids kind of allows me to tap into that a little bit more, which I love. But for example, a stick is not just a stick. This could be a magical wand. This could be a fishing pole. This could be the last piece in your animal home or bird nest. An acorn on the side of the trail is not just an acorn. It could be the squirrel's last nut it needs to collect before the winter season. Being in nature allows us to be imaginative, creative. It lets us tap into cooperation and teamwork. It helps us regulate stress and feel calmer. There's so many benefits for playing in nature. So let's get into some activities. Whether you're a caregiver, a parent, a teacher, or a naturalist like me, these activities don't need fancy supplies. They're low prep, low maintenance. All you need is a little creativity, a place to explore outside, and enthusiasm. Enthusiasm goes a long, long way. The way you present things and how excited you are about the activities, the kids are going to pick up on that, right? They typically match your energy. So as we go through these activities, I'm going to explain to you how I typically teach them, but feel free to put your own little creative twist on anything that I share today. This activity I technically haven't tried yet, but I do want to show you because I think it's going to be a hit, honestly. I cut some cardboard, recycled cardboard, into some squares. I drew a little tree trunk on here. I poked some holes. I drew some grass, not necessary. You can just make it however you want to make it. You can do this bigger, you can do it smaller than this. And what we're gonna do is next week we're talking all about art and nature. So we're looking for colors, we're looking for textures, we're looking for shapes. And we're talking about how nature is just beautiful in itself. So at the end of the program, we're going to create our own fall trees. And so each participant will get one of these, and then they can pick some leaves up that they think are really cool on the trail, and they can put them inside these little holes, and it'll create like a little fall tree for them. So if you added enough leaves to fill up all these holes, it looked like a fall tree that they can take home. Really low maintenance, low prep, low supplies. If you have any recycled cardboard at home, this is a great activity to do. Also, the fine motor skills of putting the leaf into these little holes, it's going to be really great. This is my finished product. You can do this activity with a lot of different topics. You could talk about colors, you could talk about making art, or you can just have it to keep your little one entertained as you hike and spend time outside. My next activity is all about colors, so let's get into it. Okay, so let's get into activity number 2. This activity is all about colors, which I kind of mentioned that you could bring into the last activity, which you can, but this one specifically focuses on colors. And I like to talk about colors in my early childhood programs because kids that age are probably learning about colors in other areas of their life, right? They might be picking out clothes, they might be working on their colors at home with mom and dad. They might be working on colors at their school or at their daycare, right? So it's a good topic to bring into nature because it's something they're already kind of learning. So this one's really simple activity. We just have a bag full of different paint samples, and I will bring these on the trail with me when we're talking about colors, and I typically frame it as like a color hunt. I do that with a lot of things, a color hunt, a shape hunt, like I need your guys' help finding all of these colors. But also an I Spy game could be a fun way to do this. But what we do is we just give each participant a little paint sample and they try to find this color on the trail. This is a great activity to do in the fall, right? Because you're seeing all those greens and yellows and oranges and reds and browns and things. So great activity to do in the fall, but you can also make it work in other seasons. This one has a big hole punched out of it so that you can like compare different objects to it. So you could hold this almost like a magnifying glass up against leaf litter and look for the right color. But you can also just lay them flat and have kids bring things that look like this color. You can have them work together to find things of a certain color. It's a fun way to get them interacting with nature, right? They're touching things, they're looking for things, while also working on something that they're familiar with, which is colors. So similar to colors, I like to talk about shapes in nature as well. And when I present this idea, I give them things to look at first before we hit the trail. So I'll be like, look at this acorn cap. What shape do you see? And the way I say that is really important. What shape do you see? Right? I'm not saying this is a circle. This looks like a circle, right? Because some things are a little bit more abstract, right? Like a leaf. I would say, what shape do you see? Some of them might see triangle. Some of them might see star. Some of them might just see like the circular shape of the leaf overall, right? So the way they're perceiving things is a little bit differently. So I like to present it as like an open-ended question. What do you see? So that they can look and make those connections within their brain about what shapes they're seeing and share those with the group. So one way we kind of build on this on the trail, right? We've talked about shapes, we've presented the idea. Sometimes we'll use these, and these are just like, I call them shape magnifiers. They're just cut out shapes that are laminated and then taped on a popsicle stick. It gives them something kind of physical to use to look for different shapes. So you can use this and you can look up at different things. You could look down at different leaves like this. There's a lot of different ways you could use these. We have them cut out in all the typical shapes you'd probably see, but you don't need these to explore shapes. It's just one way to kind of build on it and give them something physical to hold, and keep them a little bit more engaged in interacting with the topic we're talking about. To build on shapes a little bit, there's 2 other things I'll do on the trail that don't take any supplies at all, and they're really simple. One thing I'll do is I'll just stop at a section of the trail and I'll say, okay, what shapes do you see in this section right here? Instead of being like, oh, do you see this triangle? Do you see this circle? I'll be like, what shapes do you see? And I'll give them a moment to think about it. And then I'll be like, okay, show me where you see these shapes. I want to see what you're seeing. Show me where you see the triangle. Show me where you see the circle, right? Because they're each interpreting this scene differently, right? Some of them could be looking at the negative space on the tree. Some of them could be looking at the leaves or the holes in the leaves. And so allowing them to make those connections within their brain and then share those with the group gives them a little bit of power, right? Kids are creative. And if you just give them the space to share that creativity, it's going to go a long way. So here are a few examples of what you can do with this activity. Over here, I made a triangle with sticks, and then I also made a heart with leaves. And there's lots of different ways you can do this activity. If you are on a paved trail, one thing that I love to do, and you have access to chalk, is I will draw like the chalk outlines for them, and then they can add their different natural objects to my outlines. But again, not necessary. You can do this on any trail anywhere. And then if you want to switch gears a little bit, like you've talked about shapes, you guys are kind of over shapes. One other thing I love to do, and you can really make this your own, is I will make a simple circle for them, or have them make a circle, and I'll say, okay, here's your circle. Can you make me a face? Can you find 2 eyes, a nose, a mouth, and maybe some hair? Okay, so here's the little nature face I made. Very simple activity you can do, doesn't require any materials besides what you find in nature, and kids love to do this. They get very creative with it. Before we move on from shapes completely, there's one other thing I want to show you, and I know I've been talking about shapes a lot, but sometimes I will print off little pictures to show them examples of shapes in nature, and this is a good way to introduce the topic, or if you need to stop on the trail and they've had enough of like looking for shapes, one thing you might be able to do is pull out a picture and talk about the different shapes you see. Like the negative space could be making a triangle, or the rectangle here. Again, it's just a way of giving them examples of things they might see, or things they haven't thought about just yet. Moving on from shapes, I want to talk about another way of exploring nature that seems to be really popular with kids, and that is scavenger hunts. And scavenger hunts can be for kids of all ages. They really love it. It helps build observation skills without overwhelming them, right? You can present this as a game. You can present this as a checklist. You can keep it simple and just make it up in your head as you go. I have a few examples with me. This one I think I printed off from online. If you Google nature scavenger hunt, so many options are going to come up. This one I think I did print for Peeps, my early childhood program, because it's big pictures, brightly colored. They obviously can't read yet, so it's things they can recognize as we're hiking. For older kids, I'll give it to them on a clipboard with a pencil for them to check off. For younger kids, we typically try to work on one list together, but I'll let them check things off. That's one example. Another thing I want to show you, and this is something you have to buy, so again, not necessary. You can make a scavenger hunt your own. You can do a neighborhood scavenger hunt. You could do a texture scavenger hunt. There's so many examples online, but you can also get creative in whatever ways you need. But what I want to show you, these are called Go Find It cards, and this is one of my favorite activities to pull out of my back pocket. Literally, it is a deck of cards of like descriptive words. So this one says bumpy, this one says heavy, something that crunches. There's colors in here, there's textures in here, and there's so many ways to use these cards, and I'm going to show you a few on the trail. Alright, so one way I do this is really simple. I'll just give them a card and I'll say, okay, you go find something spotty. And typically for early childhood, I read them their card to tell them what it says before they go. And I'll give them boundaries on where they can look. And typically it's while we're hiking, right? And so let's say they found this spotty leaf, and they'll kind of match it to the card. And then I'll say, okay, show me what you found. Really simple. Another way I'll play this, or if they need more of a challenge, is I will give them like 2 cards, and they have to find something that matches both of them. So this one says smooth, and something that makes you go ooh, and so they have to find something smooth that they also love, which could be hard sometimes, right? So I'll play it like that, or the deck has examples on how to play it. There's ways to adapt it for older kids. Like you could give them 5 cards and they have to find things really fast, right? There's different ways you can adapt it. Again, this is something you have to purchase, but you could probably make these at home too. Speaking of things you can make at home, I like to incorporate movement during this time of the year, especially into the winter. It's getting colder, but I still want them to be having a positive experience in nature, even though we're outside in the cold. So I try to bring in a lot of different movement activities to get them moving and keep them warm, right? So this is the one I've done most recently. I just made these cards, these animal movement cards. So this one's a raccoon. It says, rub your hands together. This one's a skunk and it says, stand tall, wave your tail. And so what we'll do is we'll pick a card and we will all do that thing together on the trail. This one says slither like a snake. Sometimes we'll bring in the different animal sounds. It's just a way to get moving, work on those gross motor skills, while also staying warm. One of my favorite ones to do, and kids love this, is I love to also bring in some sound, right? We love to howl, and do fun things like that. So I've done this as like a paper dice before too, which is really easy. You can find printables for that online. You can also just do this with your voice, right? You can say, okay, let's slither like snakes at this section of the trail. Let's walk really slow like turtles. I always say that. I always say when we're going down a hill or something, I'll say, okay, slow your feet. Let's walk slow like a turtle, because we're bringing in how animals move while also being safe, staying warm, and moving. So if you have a little kid at home, I bet you have this in your closet. And if you don't, that's okay. There's other ways you can do this activity. But I like to bring a little bit of Play-Doh on the trail with me sometimes. And you have to be kind of careful with this because it can get everywhere. And obviously we don't want to leave anything that's not meant to be in nature. So let me show you some ways I use this. I love to use Play-Doh to explore different textures. It's a great way of making prints within your dough so that you can look at the texture. So for example, this one's a leaf, and I'm gonna kind of lightly press it into the Play-Doh and then pull it off, and it just creates a little leaf on the Play-Doh. One other thing I like to do with Play-Doh is we will press it into tree bark to look at different tree bark textures, because bark has a lot of different textures. This is where you have to be a little careful. Obviously you don't want to like squish it into the tree super hard because you're going to leave residue, but if you just kind of press it really lightly and then peel it off, you're going to see different textures from the tree. Another activity I love to have with me is classifying nature activities, and there's a lot of different ways you can do this. We have classifying nature sheets that are laminated. I did not make these, my coworker probably did, but I use them all the time. And there's a lot of different ways you can do this. This one says big versus little. This one is heavy versus light. This one is rough versus smooth. This would be a great one to pair with when you're talking about textures or you do that Play-Doh activity. And what I do is I would just like lay this flat on the trail, and I would have them find things that are rough and find things that are smooth and put them in a circle. I've done this with colors. I've done this with shapes. There's a lot of different ways you can do this. Again, all the activities I've shared today are things that you can make your own. They're just like the little building blocks, and you can get creative with it in whatever ways work best for you. All right, so the last thing I want to share with you is honestly something that was a little bit out of my comfort zone up until this year. And this year I had a lot of fun experimenting with mud pies and nature potions. Now I know that sounds like such a mess, but it is worth it. So I'm going to talk about what I've done, and then again, you can make it your own. So for nature potions, you can use a jar, you can use a cup you have at your house. I purchased these little plastic bottles for Peeps last month, and all you have to do is fill them with water, and then you can collect things on the trail to add to your nature potions. Flowers, leaves, grass, all kinds of things. There's so many things you can do with this. I've done it with a worksheet before where I asked like, what is your nature potion? Like, what's its superpower? You can just simply do it by adding things in your nature potion as you go. So what are they learning, right? What's the point of this? They're experimenting with cause and effect, right? What happens if I stir in the petals? What happens if we add a little bit of glitter? They're using their senses, their sight, their touch, their smell. And they're storytelling, right? They're imagining. They're using their imagination. Shifting from nature potions, let's talk about mud pies. This is a great spring activity. I probably wouldn't do this in the winter. I found these online. They're like mud pie recipes. You don't have to use these. I just pulled them out for one of my programs and we did a mud program. There's also a leaf soup recipe. Don't have to use these. I just had them as like accessories. This is a really fun activity. You can do it with old pots and pans. You can thrift some things to do it. You can get some spoons, some measuring cups, or you can just find a muddy spot in a park after a rainy day to play in the mud, right? And again, you're storytelling. Maybe you're a chef making a mud pie, or you're making your mom a leaf soup. You're using those natural objects in a fun way while engaging their senses. Sometimes I'll use like a little sifter. I give them things that they can play with in their own ways. So when I did the mud program, I gave them a couple of these. I gave them these recipe sheets. I gave them measuring cups. I gave them some spoons. And then I just let them have at it and be creative and imaginative in their own ways. And it was a hit. Nature is full of wonder, and kids already have the imagination to bring it to life. Activities like potions, mud pies, scavenger hunts, color hunts, shape hunts, all the things we talked about today help kids connect with the natural world while they're building those important skills. I hope this video inspires you to try one of these ideas. Thanks for joining me, and happy exploring.